And it's good to welcome to the show and have another chat to, at the moment, Acting Prime Minister David Seymour. David, good morning.
Good morning, Leah.
So, you got the big. Are you in the big office, David, or are you still in yours?
I'm at home in Epsom at the moment, but I'll be down in Wellington tomorrow. There's not a lot going on because apart from this just absolutely rapacious COVID and flu season we've had, a few people from around cabinets have taken a week off during the school holidays, particularly those who are parents.
Yeah. David, can I ask you first your reaction when you first heard the news of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump?
Well, I was pretty astonished, and you, of course, always ask yourself the question that only Americans ask, is how bad is it? Most people around the world assume if you get shot, it's very bad, but Americans always ask how bad. And in this case, I think it's extremely lucky from every point of view that it hasn't killed a candidate. Of course, that's not to take away from the man who was sitting beside him and, according to reports, shielding his family, a volunteer firefighter, a girl dad of daughters, and somebody who seems to be have been much loved. It's a really, really sad thing for him and that family. And yet, I guess that it could have been worse in the sense that another person could have been killed, and the implications of a leading candidate for office in the world's largest, or at least most powerful democracy, would have been, I think, much, much worse.
David, you are familiar with American politics, and obviously it's very, very different to what we have here in New Zealand, but something like this can go one of two ways politically, as you would know and understand. Is it something that, if played correctly, would give Donald Trump an upper hand, almost, the keys to the White House, something like this?
Well, I think that's really up to American voters, and you've got to be a bit careful as a New Zealand politician trying to speculate on that. But I think there's a few things that people can work out for themselves. There will be people who see a certain amount of stoicism and defiance from former President Trump, and that may embolden their support for him. There may be others who have sympathy for him, given that I can only imagine what it would be like to be that close to death. It literally grazed his cheek and ear by the looks of it. But there may also be completely unpredictable results. It may lead to a major sense of, well, we all need to take a good hard look at ourselves and do things differently. And a circuit breaker like that, I think, could be very good for American politics, because, I say this as someone who's lived in North America, who's visited 28 American states. I think the American project of creating a free society with a constitution that guarantees that, while imperfect, is one of the greatest experiments in human living that's ever been undertaken. And so I've got a lot of time for the United States, but I have to say that, speaking as someone who's a fan of the place generally, they've had some pretty difficult times, probably the most difficult times since they faced in the late 60s and early 70s, and it may well be that this event is a bit of a circuit breaker for them.
David, we look at the Democrats, of course, Republicans. There's been a lot of extreme language used on both sides. Neither are clean of it. And, Donald Trump has said things like, if he doesn't win, there'll be blood in the streets. Democrats have said, Trump is basically the devil and he will destroy America, which can prompt people that are radicals or been radicalised, and then we see what happened to the former president, although we don't really fully know the story of this guy. What I'm getting to is here in New Zealand, we are seeing a lot of extreme language, and I've talked about this before, and with you, and with the likes of Karen Shaw, from Te Pāti Māori, and I've said for a while now that I am quite concerned about their language, especially from Debbie Ngāwera Paka using genocide, extermination. How do you look at it? I mean, I know you as the leader of the ACT Party and being in government, you have to tread carefully, but you, David, do and don't sometimes. Are we in trouble? Are we getting that way in New Zealand where we've got this extreme language being used? And I do worry that we will have a radical person that could do something like what we saw.
Well, there's always a risk. I think it has to be put in a bit of context. Friends at different times say, it's dangerous being a politician. I say, don't worry about me being a politician. When I go and work in forestry or become a cop, that's when I'm potentially in some danger. I think we've got to just keep things in a bit of perspective. However, I also think it's true that people have gone away from two critical values. One is universal humanity, the idea that each person has an intrinsic value. And while I'm not a Christian myself, I think that the Christian value of Imago Dei, that each person is made in the image of God, is a very powerful idea that has led the argument for treating people with dignity. The liberal view of that, and I'm talking about the classical liberal tradition, spanning back hundreds of years, that people are subject to universal human rights, I think grew out of that through the likes of William Wilberforce and continues to animate a lot of people, including me as a politician today, that idea of universal human rights. I think that basic idea of universal dignity has been under attack by identity politics, the idea that actually your membership of a group defines your value. And I think it's important that we recommit ourselves to the idea that we each have inherent dignity. I think the other thing that's been lost, and it's related, is the idea that there is a objective world out there that we can study. And what I mean by that is that a lot of what passes for academia and debate is that a person's opinion counts because of who they are. So this is related to the first concept. People will say, I'm writing from an ABC, XYZ perspective, and therefore my views are valid because of my identity. And if you criticise my views, you're criticising my identity. Now, that's the opposite of the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. It's the opposite of what Galileo said. What I've always believed is that there's an objective world that we each have an equal opportunity to join hands and study. And if Galileo sees that Jupiter has moons through his telescope, that's a valid observation, and he shouldn't be suppressed for observing it. So I think that, the basic ideas are universal humanity and a one real physical world that we can all study. Those ideas have been lost, and once you lose those, very difficult to have a civilised discussion because it all just descends into me versus you.